Thank you. Hello and welcome to the Putnam Center on the campus of New England College in Henniker for this important debate between the candidates vying for the Republican nomination in the 1st Congressional District. This is our final debate of our Live Free or Die debate week here at New England College. And again, as Josh mentioned, I am Chris Ryan, host of New Hampshire Today on iHeartRadio. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our nonpartisan primary and general election debate sponsor, ARP New Hampshire, and our host, New England College, our partner, the Granite State News Collaborative, you in the audience, our listeners and viewers, and of course, as Wayne mentioned, the candidates who've had the courage to put their names on the ballot and pursue office. Here are the most important ground rules. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond to each question, and a 30-second rebuttal can be issued at my discretion. The goal today is to have the candidates engage with one another and discuss the issues and solutions to the problems facing Granite Staters. In doing so, they will respond to each panelist's question when prompted by the moderator. Coin flips have determined the order the questions go in and the order of our closing statements. Again, this is an extremely important contest ahead of September the 13th's primary. My goal is to make this all about the candidates. We're going to introduce the candidates now, and we ask you to hold your applause until we reach the conclusion of that introduction. We'll start directly to my left, Gail Huff-Brown, Matt Mowers, Russell Prescott, Tim Baxter, and Caroline Levitt. Let's hear it for our candidates. I'm also very excited to be joined by our panelist, veteran journalist David Solomon from the Granite State News Collaborative. Let's hear it for Dave. And student journalist Andrew Moylan from the New Englander, the New England College student newspaper. Let's begin now with David Solomon, who has our first question of the debate, and it is on manufacturing.
Yes, thank you, candidates, and I really appreciate all of you being here today to try to inform the voters to make the best decision possible on next Tuesday. The economy, of course, is foremost in the minds of many, and the fortunes of individuals in our economy who do not benefit from a college education are often in the limelight. So I ask you all, if elected, what initiatives would you propose or support to help improve the economic prospects of low-skilled workers who once relied on manufacturing jobs and other kinds of entry-level positions that afforded a lifetime of employment and no longer exist in many parts of the country? So what do we do to help them?
And we'll start with Gail Huff-Brown.
Thank you for the question, and it's a very, very important one. One of the problems that we have, obviously, not just here in New Hampshire, but all over America, is making sure that our young people not only get the kind of jobs that are going to keep them employed, but will allow them to buy a home and have the American dream that me and my husband have been able to have. I got into this race because I was concerned about my grandchildren and whether or not they were going to have those opportunities. What do we do about that? First of all, we have to make housing affordable. There has to be a way for local and state and federal to work together in private partnership with the government as well, so that we have opportunities for these people. If we don't, they're going to leave. They're going to leave our great state of New Hampshire. They're going to go other places. Our population is getting older here in New Hampshire, and we have to make sure that we keep people here and we keep a labor force here. Trade schools, very, very important, and we have to encourage it.
Mr. Mowers.
We know this is an issue I've been talking about now for 2.5 years, because we saw after the outset of COVID-19 that China controls way too much of the core manufacturing that we rely on here in the United States. And it's one of the reasons why I've called for onshoring as much manufacturing as possible, whether it's pharmaceutical ingredients, whether it's high-tech components, a whole bunch of other host of things. It's both in our national security interest and it's our economic interest. But the challenge we have is that here at home, we've got a bunch of folks down in D.C. that value degrees over skills. We need to reverse that again. There's nothing wrong with going to a trade school and going out there and working every single day. I was actually just at a facility yesterday. The guy said he would hire another 50 people today, if he could find the people to do it. 50 jobs at one facility. We don't have enough of those folks willing to go into those. That's why we need to work with the local and state officials to ensure that we have those training programs here in New Hampshire and then keep those folks gainfully employed when they graduate as well.
And we'll go to Mr. Prescott repeating the question. It is in regard to making sure that there is livable wages for individuals who do not have college degrees, and you have 60 seconds.
Sure thing. So I've run a small business for 38 years. We had 10 employees, all the way grown up to 45 employees in New Hampshire because we have a strong economy. And that I brought to Concord, and I made sure that our economy stayed strong. We made sure there's lower taxes, made sure that we don't have an income tax, made sure that we balanced our budget, and really did business-friendly legislation. We made sure that the community colleges were funded. I mean, I personally made sure that I respected my employees and know that they need a living wage. I personally provide 100% of health insurance for the premium that is paid. No money comes out of their paycheck. I make sure I do bonuses on a regular basis based on how well the company is working and doing. And that's where I keep my pulse on the business. And we need more employers like that. In a strong economy, it can happen nationwide.
Mr. Baxter.
Well, Chris, I want to thank you and New England College for putting on this debate. The first thing that comes to mind is we have to stop demonizing trade schools. We have to stop demonizing blue-collar manufacturing jobs in this country. I'm the only one on the stage that has student loans, and we just saw how Biden is trying to bribe votes. And what they're doing is they're robbing Peter, the construction worker, to pay Paul, the gender studies major. And it's just plain wrong. That's the bottom line. And so we've got to revitalize American manufacturing in our country. We see the highest trade deficit in American history under Joe Biden right now. He has no economic record of success to run on. And instead of improving productivity in our country, cutting regulations, cutting taxes, they're running the printing press. They're spending more money. So we've got to completely change the way we run our economy to make sure there's high-quality manufacturing jobs.
Thank you. Ms. Levitt.
Well, I was proud to serve as a spokeswoman in President Trump's White House when we unleashed the might of our American economy. Wages were high and unemployment was the lowest it's been in decades. We need to get back to that. And this is personal to me. I grew up in a small business family here in New Hampshire. We own a car dealership and we owned an ice cream stand. So we will get back to that when I'm elected to Congress. And we do it by stopping the reckless, unmitigated spending that's enabled by both Democrats and weak Republicans in Washington, D.C. We'll do it by reducing red tape and rolling back burdensome federal regulations that are getting in the way of our domestic industry here in New Hampshire. And we'll also do it by pushing back aggressively against the Democrats' tax and spend agenda. It's the Democrats that want to hike our corporate tax rate higher than communist China. That's going to send all of our jobs overseas. So we have to reduce regulation, roll back red tape, lower taxes, ensure there's more money in the pockets of Granite Staters to unleash our American economy again.
We're going to go to a question on student debt now, since that was referenced in the remarks there. And we're going to go to Andrew with the New Englander on that.
Since 1980, undergraduate college costs have increased 169%. Do you agree with President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan? If not, what needs to be done to make college education more affordable in the United States?
Mr. Mowers.
I disagree with President Biden and Chris Pappas on this one, because what it's doing is taking from the working class and giving money to those who are earning six figures. It's the opposite of what the Democratic Party always said they were trying to do. Instead of taking from the rich to give to the poor, it's the other way around. One of the things no one's talking about right now, everyone wants to talk about student debt. No one's talking about the cost of college, which is the underlying reason we're talking about these debt problems. And the issues are that the colleges and universities often are increasing tuition at rates with no pressure at all. They continue to increase them sometimes 9 to 10% per year, sometimes more, and yet there's no one actually holding them accountable for these costs. And so my proposal is saying that if you're a university that wants to have your students have access to the federal loan program, you got to open up your books. If you're going to try to increase the cost above the rate of inflation, you better provide a good justification for doing so, or your students won't have eligibility, and then you'll start seeing them cut their costs. And all this loan forgiveness program that just came through, all it's going to do is take off the onus off the universities, and you'll continue to see the costs go up. It's going to incentivize higher costs, not cut them.
Mr. Prescott.
Thank you. Having the loan forgiveness really harms our small businesses that that take the time to say, all right, I'm going to get a loan. I'm going to start a small business. I'm going to buy tools for my trade. I'm going to be a plumber or electrician and make sure I have my tools. Those things cost money just like schooling costs money. And I believe that to target one return of money to the college student that decided to go into debt and not give it to the other person that wanted a career in the trades and not give them forgiveness of their debt is choosing between people in our America, and it's creating conflicts between us. We need to stop doing that. That's number one. I touched on the fact that when I was in the Senate, we always supported the community college systems because that's an inexpensive way of getting an education. For the first 2 years, 100% of that transfers to our university system. I will continue to strive to have affordability in education.
Mr. Baxter.
Well, again, I'm the only one on this stage that has student loans, so this is something that I've thought a lot about, and this is really a moral issue in our country. And I think it reveals, unfortunately, how entitled so many people in my generation have become. Just take Harvard University, for example. If you go there and maybe you have 50 or 100 grand of debt, you are then one of the most privileged people to ever walk the earth after you graduate Harvard, because you went to one of the best schools in the country. People need to be responsible for their own actions. You get that education, you get those skills, you need to pay for your student loans. It's just that simple. And we're demonizing blue-collar and manufacturing jobs, and the government is artificially subsidizing these loans. They're basically telling and pushing young kids that you need to rack up all this debt to succeed in our society, and they don't. We should be encouraging entrepreneurship, trade schools, and blue-collar jobs, not funneling everyone into higher universities.
Ms. Levitt, again, the question was in regard to student loan forgiveness and President Biden's plan to forgive student loans under $10,000.
Well, let's be very clear on this. The federal government, Joe Biden, and any of the Democrats cannot cancel student loan debt. What it does is it transfers it onto the backs of hardworking folks like my parents who didn't go to college, who took up trades, who started a business. And it's completely unfair to make someone who got a degree in gender studies for $500,000 to force hardworking people to pay for that. So what we can do is this. Frankly, with all due respect to New England College, the higher education university system is completely corrupt. It's a racket that's robbing my generation of their futures and putting burdensome debt on their back. We need to go after the endowments at these very liberal elitist universities and tax those. The federal government needs to go on offense with this issue. We need to incentivize trades and skills in our public school system, and we do that by getting the federal government's hands out of our education system, and I am a big believer in abolishing the Department of Education, and I will fight to do that every single day when I'm elected.
Mrs. Huff-Brown.
Well, I do believe this is an issue of fairness. It comes down to fairness. I actually have somebody in my family that owes over $100,000 in college loans right now. So I know the burden, and it's difficult. My husband and I paid our way through college, and we were thankful to be able to help our children. And I sympathize because it is a really, really tough issue. But it does put one group of people ahead of another group of people. I'm not going to get any kind of a refund for the thousands and thousands of dollars that were given out. I looked up some of the courses. One of them I found was memology. Did you know you can go to college and get a degree in memology? I don't even know what that is. But I thought, that's sad, because in our system, education is about furthering ourselves, right? It's about furthering our minds and opening ourselves up. And we have to make sure that we do it in a logical way. So no, I don't support it, and we need to get back to common sense.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Dave Solomon of the Granite State News Collaborative with a question on the economy.
Well, things aren't entirely bad. Unemployment is at historically low levels here in New Hampshire and elsewhere. But in other pockets, inflation is terrible. So in terms of the voters, in terms of the people that you would be serving, in terms of the American public at large, who do you think is winning in this current economy? And who do you think is losing? And why?
Mr. Prescott.
Yes, I think the retirees are losing with inflation. If you have a fixed income, you're not having income coming in because you've retired from that. You take a certain amount of money from your stockpile that you've stored up your whole life, and you spend that every month. I've come across many retirees that say, I used to take out, say, $500 for my daily use for the month. Now I have to take out $700 because I pay so much of gasoline. So I think that's where people are losing, is those that are on fixed incomes. The other point where I'd like to make sure that people realize is that I think that because of our GDP growth here in New Hampshire is still positive, I think that we're the only state left, it is good for workers. It is good for my employees. We're paying more money for them for working because of this stronger economy. So I think there's a winners and there's some losers.
Mr. Baxter.
Well, respectfully to the question, I think the question is wildly out of touch. This is one of the worst economies for people in decades. The trade deficit is an all-time high. Our national debt is $30 trillion. Our unfunded liabilities are $100 trillion. So the future is looking bleak. And right here and now, we're seeing about 10% inflation annually. So people on fixed incomes, people that are just working to scrape by, they are feeling the pain right now. And the bottom line is they're getting screwed by career politicians that are printing and spending endless money like drunken sailors. And we just got to get back to normalcy. And as a state rep here in New Hampshire, a volunteer legislator, I worked on the Ways and Means Committee to cut spending. We were the only state in the whole country to cut spending. And in part, it's from my business background. I've got to balance my own budget every single day. So we just need that leadership, that fiscally conservative New Hampshire values in Washington, which I will bring.
Ms. Levitt, the question is in regard to the winners and losers in the current economy.
Well, everyone is losing in this current economy except for the politicians and the special interest groups that are enriching themselves on the backs of hardworking people. Our small business community is losing. I talk to them every single day. I'm proud to be overwhelmingly supported by them in this campaign, raising more money from in-state New Hampshire donors than any candidate in this race. They're losing because they cannot find enough people to hire to fill the positions that they need. Our retirees and our elderly in this state are losing because their 401k plans and their retirement benefits are dwindling every single day. And young people across this district are especially losing. We are being robbed of our futures. The American dream has never been more out of reach or unattainable for young people, especially graduating from college with burdensome college debt. Rents are skyrocketing, inflation is through the roof, and this is enabled not just by the Democrat Party, but weak Republicans. I'm proud to be one of the only candidates in this race who has raised my hand and said, I will not vote to raise the debt ceiling in Washington, D.C. We cannot continue to kick this can down the road. Frankly, I think that's why the establishment is D.C. is attacking me on this campaign right now.
Mrs. Huff-Brown.
This is an easy one. Stop the spending. Just stop. Stop. All of these relief efforts that we have put out have done nothing but put more and more and money out into our economy, printing money, providing money when we shouldn't be, and keeping people home instead of incentivizing them to go to work. I was talking to someone the other day. She said she had 2 housekeepers that quit. Why? They told her they could make more money staying home than they could make if they continued housekeeping in an inn. That's pathetic. Who are the winners? The Democratic donors, no question about it, because they are giving millions of dollars to these green energy companies that are turning out all these products, all these different things that we don't even know if half of them are going to work. China definitely is a winner because of the chips and the other computer components that come from that country. Losers, frankly, I think everyone is. I think everyone is a loser. My mom is on Social Security. I worry about Social Security, and I want to make sure that the next generation has what they paid into.
Mr. Bowers, again, the question is on the winners and losers in the current economy.
Yeah, the only reason anyone would think there's a winner right now is because Joe Biden decided he wants to try to redefine what a recession is. I can't say I'm surprised he doesn't know how to define what a recession is, though, because I'm not sure he and his party even know how to define what a woman is right now. And so I can't say I'm too surprised by that. I stopped off at Walmart this morning to pick up some milk for my son. We ran out this morning, so I had to rush out to Walmart, and I met Sharon, who is a Walmart greeter there. She's now looking at picking up extra shifts because she can't keep up with the rate of inflation. She has to work harder for the same amount of money she's spending every single day. It's America's middle class that is losing every single day under this economy. And we're seeing it right now because we have an America Last energy policy where Joe Biden and Chris Pappas are shutting down American energy production. Totally different experience than what I had working with President Trump. We actually worked to approve the Keystone XL pipeline. We knew that we had to produce more energy here in the United States. We shouldn't be outsourcing it to China the way that Joe Biden and Chris Pappas did. They decided to give a bunch of Chinese solar manufacturers U.S. tax dollar handouts either.
Thank you. But one of the most important things for Republican voters heading into Tuesday's primary is nominating the individual who they feel is the best to defeat Chris Pappas. So this question is, why you and not one of your opponents? We'll start with Mr. Baxter.
Well, one of the things that I've done that's different from every candidate on this stage is I set up my campaign headquarters in Manchester. Manchester is the biggest city in New Hampshire and in the 1st District. And Pappas is from there. He's got deep roots, his family, and this strategy that the last 2 nominees have followed of we're just going to kind of ignore Manchester. We're almost going to concede it because he's got more support there. We can't possibly win if we give away the biggest part of the district. So we're hustling for every single last vote in the primary, but we're building a base that's going to allow us to go upwards in the general, and that's very, very important. Also, my experience, I'm one of the few people on this stage where, along with Russell as well, where all my experience is stuff I've done in New Hampshire. I'm a small business owner. I founded a nonprofit. I'm a volunteer legislator, and that biography is one that's going to be much more appealing to independent voters than one of stuff you've done in D.C.
Ms. Levitt.
Well, first, what we shouldn't do is elect someone who already proved to us that he cannot beat Chris Pappas. And my opponent, Matt Mowers, says he's a tested conservative, but he already lost the test that means the most. He already lost to Pappas, and we deserve to elect someone who can beat Pappas in November. I believe I'm the best candidate to do that for a few reasons. First and foremost, we need someone who can draw a clear contrast with Mr. Pappas. I'm a proud born and raised Granite Stater in a business family. We all know Pappas likes to use that to pretend that he's a moderate because his family owns the Puritan. That's not true. He's a far-left Democrat extremist, and we need to call him out for his egregious voting record, and I've been doing that over the past year. I also believe I'm the best candidate to beat Pappas because I'm making inroads with the most influential demographic in our electorate, young Granite Staters. Generation Z and Millennial Americans, or Granite Staters, I'm sorry, we've been reaching out to more than any candidate on this stage. I have the largest army of young people knocking doors for me every single day. Our message is resonating, and we will win them with them in the primary, but also in November as well.
Thank you. Ms. Huff-Brown.
I have talked about my life experience. I'm a mother, I'm a new grandmother, I'm a military spouse, and I've walked the road many of you have walked. And I've shared a lot of those personal experiences, and I think that those are valuable. I spent 30 years as a reporter. What did I do every day? I interview people, I research, I get to the bottom of things, I ask questions. Those are my skills. I think we need those in Washington. I spent nearly 4 years overseas. My husband was U.S. ambassador. He was appointed by President Trump. I served as president of the Diplomatic Spouses Association, every single day pushing back against China. I understand the geopolitical difficulties that America faces right now. I don't just listen to things, I look into them. I went down to the southern border. I got the endorsement from the Border Patrol Council. Why? Because I took the time to go down there. I'm the only person who did that. I also went to the northern border, and that's valuable too. So I think life experience really matters.
Thank you, Mr. Mowers. Again, the question, why you and not one of your opponents in defeating Chris Pappas?
Sure. Well, it's because we're running this campaign the New Hampshire way. I'm honored to receive the support of thousands of Granite Staters across the entire state. The average contribution we've received is around $50, because people who are donating that, investing that little bit in this tough economy are invested in our campaign. We're going out every single day, shaking every single hand, diner to diner, door to door, bar to bar, talking to people about what really matters in their life. I think it matters to have walked in their shoes, to be the one who has to write the check to the bank every single month when they have to pay the mortgage, or figure out how they're going to pay for their home heating oil this winter the way my wife and I have to. You know, we're seeing too many people struggling right now. 2 years ago when we were running, everything was theoretical. We said if you spend too much money, you're going to have inflation. If you shut down American energy production, you're going to have $5 a gallon gas. People are living it every single day today. and they're ready for a tested conservative to go down there and change that, that's exactly the message we're bringing throughout the entire district. And we're not going to stop until November 8th when we win, replace Chris Pappas, then fire Nancy Pelosi in January.
A follow-up, down the stretch of this campaign, we've seen a lot of negative advertising on TV.
May I answer one question first?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Prescott, go ahead.
That'd be great. All right, make it 2 minutes.
Minute and 10 because of my interlude.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, we know that the country is going in the wrong direction, and we need to change that. And I've done that in the state of New Hampshire for the last 10 years. And how I've done it is by saying the same thing I've said for 24 years running for office. Balance our budget. Take the deficits, make them surpluses. When we have the surplus, we can take care of the needs of our country. Right now, we're not doing that. I did it for 10 years straight, winning elections 5 times. By doing this, telling people what I'm going to do and actually getting it done. Our economy is robust today because of my hard work. I want to do that in Washington, and I've done it with a positive campaign because you need a positive message to get more than just a Republican vote to win in general elections. I've won in presidential elections the whole county of Rockingham County. In a wave election year for Democrats, I won because I have the independent vote, because I tell people what I'm going to do, and I get it done.
My apologies, Mr. Prescott. So following up on that line of answers, obviously the campaign has gotten negative down the stretch. People are seeing that on TV. You've labeled each other liars, frauds, and everybody's a liberal on this stage, it would appear as well, based upon the advertising, although every liberal I know would be like, yeah, that's not quite the case. So what is the approach? What is the benefit to this approach down the stretch in your view? We'll start with Ms. Levitt.
Well, I would like to first respond to my opponent, Matt Mauer's answer to the previous question. He said that he's going to beat Chris Pappas because he's running a grassroots homegrown campaign. That is absolutely not true. Don't take my word for it. Follow the money, okay? Matt Mauer's moved to our state to run Chris Christie's presidential campaign.
It's not true.
That is true, Matt. You're a former lobbyist, you're a longtime political operative, and you are bought and paid for by the establishment in Washington, D.C. They have spent, again, go look this up, guys, don't take it from me, $5 million to prop up Matt Mauer's campaign and to viciously smear me on television. This is coming from dark money super PAC groups down in Washington. I am proud to have raised more money from the people of this district than any candidate running in this race. Don't take my word for it. Follow the money. If you want a true homegrown America First fighter who's going to go to bat for you in Washington, D.C., stand up for our state, my home state. I ask for your vote on Tuesday the 13th.
Mr. Mowers, please respond.
Well, look, you know, it was in the Union Leader just this Sunday that others on the stage, including the previous speaker, is running a negative and vitriolic campaign for the better part of a year, attacking me, making up everything that they can under the sun, and I get it. You know, when you're out front the way President Trump was in 2016 in a primary or the way I am today, you know, you're going to take your fair share of shots. But it doesn't bother me because we are running a grassroots campaign. I know that the people of New Hampshire are smart and can see through the baloney that they're looking at on TV every day, including, by the way, the nearly $1 million of attack ads that are running against me just this week. Just this week, there will be nearly $1 million in attack ads against me. But they're going to see through all of that because they know the truth. When I look them in the eye and we talk about the fact that we need a tough and tested conservative to go down to Washington, D.C., not just to break up the swamp, not just to break up the bureaucracy, but to ensure that there's an American dream to pass down to the next generation.
The fact that he can't even say my name and refers to me as the previous speaker shows that you're a coward, Matt. You can say my name. It's Caroline Levitt, and I ask for your vote on the 13th.
See, this is exactly, if I could just say real quick, this is exactly what Republicans are getting fed up with. We have real enemies right now, whether it's socialists in Washington, D.C., or a bunch of communists abroad in the Chinese Communist Party. That's what we need to be talking about. Those are the folks we need to be going after. And all this bickering that happens up here every single day, all this bickering in this campaign is nothing more than a sideshow and distraction from the real issues, which is how do we ensure that this country is saved from the socialist undertaking and the socialist experiment that we're seeing unfold before our eyes right now.
Mrs. Huff-Brown. Question was on the benefits of negative campaigning.
I know the question. It's just, we've got enough kids in Washington. Let's send an adult.
I ask you to hold your applause.
I mean, there's so much negative advertising going on. Frankly, I go to the mailbox, I laugh. I laugh. I see pictures of myself like this. I'm a puppet. I'm this. I'm like, this is stuff coming from you. It's coming from Caroline. It's coming from it's coming from everyone. Whatever. It's politics. You're right about that. It is politics. We have to be bigger and better than that. I'm not a politician. Never will be. Never have been. And yeah, I just don't engage in that. I just don't. So that's my answer.
But you yourself have said that Mr. Mowers is a fraud.
Oh, what I said is that voting in 2 different states for the same election is voter fraud.
It was a
It's
different-
voter fraud. It's what the Democrats do. You can say whatever you want about the Attorney General. It's silly stuff and all. It's fraud.
Yeah, respectfully,
fraud.
respectfully, that's just the furthest thing from the truth. And I talked about folks who redefine things a little bit earlier in one of my statements, and Gail would like to redefine what the law is. Look, the truth of the matter is this. The Attorney General looked into exactly what Gail continues to say, which is just not true. They said it was 2 different elections. It was 2 different totally elections. And this is the things that drive people nuts. You can't stand up here, by the way, and say that we should all be unified and then launch the same failed, lying attack
I'm
that
not
you have for
launching
6
an attack.
months.
I'm telling the facts.
Well,
you voted in 2 separate states in the same presidential election.
That's just a false
You
statement.
voted in 2 separate
I'll tell you,
states
Gail,
in the
Gail,
same
respectfully,
election.
We have former U.S. Attorney Tom Colantino here, former U.S. Attorney for the District of New Hampshire, our state.
Yeah.
And you know what? He came out and said there's nothing there, and anyone.
Yeah, but
hold on,
he
Gail,
went on to say
respectfully,
no. He went
said
on
no,
to
he-
say
no, he's-
he went on to say he wouldn't talk about
Gail.
the
Hey,
other
Gail.
state of New Jersey.
Gail,
Of
he-
the other state
he
of New
did- he didn't.
Jersey.
He's the former U.S. Attorney
No,
for New
I
Hampshire.
understand.
He's
I know
sitting-
exactly
he's sitting
who he
in the
is.
audience right here, and he said his words that anyone bringing this up is purely doing it for politics, and that's the politics that you're
Well,
playing
then
right
he
now.
doesn't believe in voter integrity either.
Now
You
you're-
don't
now-
believe in
see,
election integrity
Yeah,
either.
That's just a.
No,
see,
I
this is
mean,
what happens when
this is
when-
what we're fighting. This is what we're fighting, Matt.
We're going to move on. We're going to move on.
If I could just real quick, Chris.
Well, you've had time. We're going to move on to Russell Prescott now.
I
60
know-
seconds.
I know that negative campaigning does not work. I know from personal experience. I know that the golden rule is the way we should live our lives, to treat others the way we want to be treated. That would be a real change in Washington, D.C. Also, the only thing I want to talk about after this primary is I voted twice to stop the income tax. That's all I want to talk about. That's a good thing. You know, and I just want to continue to say, 38 years of experience in business, you don't argue with your customers. You will not grow jobs by being argumentative. Negative campaigning doesn't work. I did it with Maggie Hassan and won, but 2 years later, I lost. 6 years later, I won with a positive campaign and stopped Maggie Hassan's income tax on LLCs. With long-lasting effect, I was in office for 10 years, and our economy is strong. I will not change my message. Balance the budget. Stop inflation.
Thank you. Mr. Baxter, 60 seconds.
Well, it is sad how this campaign has descended into the gutter. It's probably the nastiest race in the whole state right now. And the truth is, Gail, Matt, Caroline, they all have super PACs that have been, unleashing negative ads on everyone in this race. And it is very sad. And I don't condone the attacks that are against you, Caroline, from defending Main Street, but the truth is your narrative is misleading. Ryan Salome, the main donor to the PAC slamming you, maxed out to your campaign just 3 weeks ago. And his wife, Susan, maxed out to your campaign as well. You tried to get their support. You were playing the game and failed. And this is a repeated pattern for you. You did the same thing with Speaker McCarthy, or soon-to-be Speaker, excuse me. You endorsed him. You then lied about it, tried to cover it up, and got caught. And the sad reality is you just have nothing to show for it at this point. And this is why you shouldn't sell out to try to win an election.
That's not true
30
at all.
seconds.
Yeah, if I may, I would like to say Kevin McCarthy and the establishment in Washington, D.C. are spending $5 million against one person on this stage, and that is me. They are launching desperate attacks ads, viciously, personally smearing me and my family.
What's not true about what I said?
The fact that I'm beholden to Kevin McCarthy, which is not
You
true. Matt
endorsed him.
Mowers is bought and paid for by Kevin McCarthy, and I don't feel beholden to someone who's spending $5 million to attack me and my family. I am only beholden to the voters of this district.
Mr. Mowers, you want to respond?
Hold on one sec. We got to get the record straight on this. There's a couple different groups attacking you. There's CLF, which is supporting Mowers, and there's Defending Main Street. Defending Main Street, all the negative ads, the 1.4 million is from Defending Main Street. Their main donor maxed out to, and his wife, 3 weeks ago. So you were trying to get their support, and you failed. And it was the same thing with McCarthy. It's sad and pathetic that you sold out and now you're crying foul. You just didn't get their support. You were playing the game.
No. Again, I have not sold out to anyone. I am funded more so than anyone on this stage, including you, Tim, and Matt, and everyone else, by the people of the district. Again, if you want to know who the true homegrown candidate is, please follow the money and go back to that. I am not beholden to anyone in D.C.
You have about $1 million.
That's
We're going to move on.
That's why they're
We're gonna
attacking me,
move on.
Tim.
Mr.
That's why
Mowers
they're
invoked. He gets
attacking me.
30 seconds, and then we're going to move on to policy.
Yeah, if I could real quick. You know, the only folks I'm going to work for when I get down to Washington is the people of New Hampshire. And that's why I've been so honored to run a New Hampshire campaign where we go out and talk to people at their doorstep or where they're having a bite to eat. That's why I'm honored to have the support of thousands of Granite Staters who've chipped in on average $50 to our campaign. That's the kind of campaign I'm going to run, is those New Hampshire values I'm going to remember when I get down to Washington, D.C. Because it needs a dose of New Hampshire common sense to stop this crazy spending, to stop the socialist experiment that's going on right now, and to make sure our country is there to be handed down to the next generation.
Thank you. This question from our friends at ARP New Hampshire. Many older Americans rely on Medicare for critical health coverage for older Americans. If elected, how would you strengthen Medicare for future generations, in particular given the emergence of the gig economy? This goes to Gail Huff-Brown.
First thing I think we need to do is look at combining parts A and B. I think that's a very, very solid alternative. We also need to be looking at catastrophic coverage. But ultimately, we need to bring competition back into the equation. Competition fell out of health care after Obamacare was rammed through in reconciliation 12 years ago. Obamacare, although it does a lot of good things for some people, for middle-class people, they are getting killed by it. Medicare, we have to be more sure that people are getting the kind of care and coverage excuse me, that they deserve. And that's very, very important. One of the things that I will be sure is I will be sure to listen to all of the people that are involved in the conversation and help to come to solutions. We have to get people at the table, and we have to sit down and really hammer something out. This is something that people depend on. This is something that's important for our population, and this is something that we have to preserve.
Thank you. Mr. Mowers.
My dad relies on Medicare. My mom's aging into it right now. So it is something we have to protect. And the biggest challenge right now is our seniors can't afford the out-of-control prescription drug costs. We need to cap those out-of-pocket expenses. It's something that there should be common sense and common agreement on. It's something that we can do for seniors that is going to ensure that they don't have to choose between their life-saving medication and retirement, not going to have to choose between life-saving medication and heating their home, or choosing what to eat. That's going to be something that's common sense that we can get done. It's a conservative solution, too, because it's looking out for those who most need it.
Mr. Prescott.
Thank you. Medicare, is being harmed by inflation. If we can stop the inflation, that's the first step. And I've done that many times by balancing a budget, changing deficits to surpluses, and use that money as the second step for COLAs, cost of living adjustments, making it sure of people that they have a pay increase on fixed incomes. That's what I do in my business. We need to do that in Washington, D.C.
Mr. Baxter.
So we need to protect Medicare, and one of the ways we can do that is by getting the overall cost of health care down. The lower health care is, the less the government as a whole has to spend to make sure that seniors get the care that they were promised and that they deserve. So one, we need to allow to have health insurance plans across state lines. We need to allow group association plans so workers can use leverage in numbers to get lower health insurance plans and lower premiums. We need to unleash innovative new models like direct primary care. And then the other thing we have to do is make sure the cost of prescription drugs go down. You see so many lobbyists and bureaucrats that are pushing to make sure that pharmaceutical companies are making more and more money. And we need to make sure that the cost of prescription drugs is going down. And look, if you want to vote for a lobbyist, there's a lobbyist on this stage. But if you want a proven conservative fighter and a business owner, then I hope you consider voting for me.
Ms. Levitt.
Well, for all those who are relying and depending on their Medicare benefits, we absolutely have to protect them. And they are in harm's way right now because of the unmitigated, disastrous spending coming out of Washington, which is, again, enabled not only by Democrats, but by weak Republicans, too. And I will reiterate my pledge to not vote to raise the debt ceiling in Washington, D.C., and only fight to pass a truly balanced budget, which will in turn lower inflation. You know, the healthcare system in itself, in its entirety, is a mess. It's no secret, right? It's the only industry in our country, frankly in the world, that you can shop for a good or a service, not know the price of that until after it's received. We have to fight for price transparency and also fight to lower costs for consumers with innovative free market solutions, increase competition, which will then result in better care for our consumers and our people.
Go to David Solomon now with the Granite State News Collaborative, who has a question on energy.
Yes, even as we speak, there's a large conference taking place in the state on energy prices and the outlook for the winter. The operator of the New England grid has warned that the region has to expand its capacity for transmission of natural gas and electricity. So I'd like to ask each of you, if elected, what initiatives would you support? Do you support the construction of more energy infrastructure in New Hampshire, like windmills, pipelines, transmission towers, as a way of lowering energy costs, despite widespread public opposition to these projects, particularly in the areas where they're proposed?
Mr. Mowers.
Well, we do need an all-of-the-above approach. I mean, you know, it was this past February when my wife and I were sitting on the couch and we got a notice saying that a couple from a town away from us with 6 kids couldn't afford their home heating oil for 2 whole weeks. 2 weeks. So they sat and plugged in space heaters into their living room and all huddled around. We're going to hear countless stories like that this winter. Countless families who are out there in the cold because of the policies being pushed. And now we have a doubling of electricity rates that have to be fought for from there too. You know, I do support additional alternatives. I mean, my dad was a diver on the construction of the nuclear power plant, Seabrook, and we need to have more nuclear. It's more reliable. It's safer than ever before. We need to provide additional sources for natural gas. We need to increase the ability for us to bring hydro into the state through appropriate means that's also environmentally friendly. These are all things that are going to drive down the price of fuel and home heating oil, as well as then our electric costs. And I'm the only one up here who's actually worked on it. Because I worked with President Trump to approve the Keystone Pipeline.
Apologies, cut.
All right, no worries.
Mr. Prescott.
Yes, my experience in the state Senate, I was the chair of Energy, and also I helped with passing the Site Evaluation Committee. And then as an executive counselor, I helped confirm members of that Site Evaluation Committee. I think that was a good first step, so that it's out of the politics. If we're going to get pipelines and power lines into our state to give us more energy, I still think we need a lot of work to be done to make the Site Evaluation Committee more independent and give it more power so that it is outside of the politics of, you know, being in the state Senate or making those decisions there in the state Senate and also the House of Representatives. That is what I think we need to do, because when you have people on a Site Evaluation Committee that are separate from the political process, that do the bidding of the state, that's what we have to work on, that structure. And I think we'll have more energy coming into our state and lower our costs.
Mr. Baxter, the question is in regard to energy production and what you would support here in New Hampshire.
So we need to restore American energy independence and production, not just in New Hampshire, but all across the United States. We need to expand nuclear energy. We need to expand fracking. We need to allow drilling on federal lands. And we need to stop and pause for a second and ask, why did we get where we are right now? And it's because Joe Biden has basically become a pawn of the far-left environmentalist push. Unfortunately, there's this notion that the world is going to end in 12 years or less if we don't, remove all CO2 emissions in our society. And that's just laughable. It's wrong. And we need to expand American energy independence. And yes, at some point in the future, will there be more solar? Will there be more wind? Will there be more electrical power vehicles? Yes. But does that need to happen tomorrow? And should taxpayers be forced to subsidize green energy? Absolutely not.
Thank you. Ms. Levitt.
Well, as we all know, Eversource recently said that our electric rates are going to be 4 times higher this year. The Biden administration sent a letter to our New England federal delegation. You probably didn't hear about it from Chris Pappas, but that we are going to have a home heating oil shortage in our region this winter. So in January of 2023, when we take back the House, we're going to need a congresswoman who is going to be tough and serious about this issue and help to relaunch our domestic energy production. I was there in President Trump's White House when we announced at a press conference I helped put together that we were a net exporter of oil for the first time in our nation's history. That was an incredible achievement, and it's all been ruined because of this administration's war on our domestic energy production. Again, we need an all-above approach. We need to go back to oil and drilling on federal lands. We need to unlaunch the domestic energy production, provide for those good-paying jobs, fracking, nuclear. We can provide for the American people here at home, and we need to get back to that.
Mrs. Huff Brown.
All of the above obviously is definitely what we need. All you have to do is look around the world right now. What is the issue of today? It is energy. Look at Ukraine and Russia. What is the issue of today? It is energy. I know you know, because you're all very well educated and you listen to the news and you know what's going on, that already they have shut off from Russia what they're getting, gas and oil that's being distributed over to Ukraine and to other countries in that region, and now they are completely cut off. This is not just a financial issue. This is a security issue. This is a national security issue for America and for every other country. It's very, very serious. Yes, we need to be energy independent, because if we're not, it's not just about losing money. It's not just about staying warm, and those are all obviously very, very important. It's about our national security, and we want to make sure that America stays sovereign.
Thank you. Andrew Moylan, student journalist with the New Englander here at New England College, has a question on school safety.
Last May in Uvalde, Texas, a teenager legally bought 2 AR-15 style rifles days after he turned 18. He then used these 2 weapons to kill 19 young students and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School. Would you support a federal law requiring a waiting period to give law enforcement additional time for background checks?
Mr. Prescott.
Thank you. I would not support any changes in our law. We have people that are needing mental health support. The firearms themselves are not the cause of these really, I'm choked up about it because they're really, really drastic things that happen. And the firearms are not the problem. It's when they get into the hands of the owners of those firearms. There's the problem that we need to make sure that we have a strong mental health system. And it's one of the main parts that I talked about when I first ran for this seat. I was on WMUR and that same question was asked. I think that for me and my family, we had the greatest effect on my family growing up was our police department. My chief of police helped raise my children because he was a part of the community. I think we have to support law enforcement so much in these times. And that's what I would put my emphasis.
Mr. Baxter.
Well, these senseless acts of violence, these shootings, they're horrifying. They're sickening. And that's why it's so disgusting that far-left Democrats are letting crime rage rampant in blue cities all across this country. And they're doing nothing about it to stop it. It's disgusting. And I will never apologize for being a 100% supporter of the Second Amendment. I'm proud to be endorsed by the National Association for Gun Rights. I'm the only person on this stage that's endorsed by a major gun group running for Congress here. That's very important for you all to know, for those that are listening at home. And the other thing that we have to recognize is that Chris Pappas has called me dangerous and disgusting for supporting your God-given Second Amendment rights. He's called me out by name. And he knows it's because I will never give an inch on your Second Amendment rights. Send me to Washington, and I will protect your Second Amendment rights.
Ms. Levitt, the question in regard to school safety and guns.
More gun control, whether it's at the state level or the federal level, is not going to solve this problem. You know, here in New Hampshire, we're this shining example of a Second Amendment culture. We have one of the highest capacities of gun ownerships of any state in this country and historically low crime rates. And so when I'm in Congress, I will never vote for more burdensome restrictions on our Second Amendment rights. Our founding fathers were very clear for a reason. The rights to bear arms shall not be infringed. And in fact, what we can do is repeal the Gun-Free School Zone Safety Act, which is allowing for our public schools across this country to be soft targets for mentally deranged, evil criminals. We don't have a gun problem in America. We have a culture problem. You know, you look at the one commonality in all of these horrific shootings, and they're typically perpetuated by young, deranged, isolated white men. We need to get back to the core values that make this country great: love of God, faith, family, community, and wage this culture war against the Democrats, and then we'll hopefully see an end to this violence.
Mrs. Huff-Brown.
Well, we just saw a couple of days ago what happened in Canada, and that was 10 people that were killed by knives. So we have to dispel this whole false argument, if you will, that guns are what kill. People kill. People kill. I'm a proud gun owner. My husband's a proud gun owner. We shoot at the White Birch, and I don't plan to go to Washington and change any laws. I'm a Second Amendment supporter.
Mr. Mowers.
You know, before I came here, I dropped my son off at daycare this morning, and he's now walking. So I actually let him walk through the door. He's 1 year old and just started walking through himself. And, you know, the only thing that goes through your mind as a parent is, I just hope he's going to be safe. And so my heart goes out to anyone who's had to experience this and any parent who's lost a child. But we also need to focus on what makes sense and what works. And all these measures we've talked about that want to take away the rights of those who have our Second Amendment rights, they don't work. What does work is making sure that we have additional resources available so that schools and law enforcement can work together to see early signs of challenges for students. Because, you know, it was right when it was said. A lot of these folks are just isolated. They're, you know, taking, you know, they believe their own frustrations into their own hands. We need to make sure that schools have the resources necessary to be safer, something, by the way, Chris Pappas has opposed before, and then also make sure they have the resources to get these children help.
Thank you. The final question comes from our nonpartisan debate sponsor, ARP New Hampshire. Many Granite Staters view Social Security as a promise that must be kept. If elected, how would you protect earned Social Security benefits for the future? And how do you view the solvency of Social Security currently? Ms. Levin.
Yes. Well, as my former boss, President Trump, said, promises made, promises kept. If you've paid into the system, we will protect your Social Security benefits. But again, we have to get serious about spending. And before we ever look at Social Security or Medicare or any of these vital programs, we have to pass a truly balanced budget that looks at all of the other garbage that D.C. is constantly funding. I am for abolishing the Department of Education. I am for abolishing the Department of Energy. I am for greatly restricting federal foreign aid. You know, last year alone, we sent, I think, $12 million to fund gender studies in Pakistan. That's ridiculous. That's stealing our tax dollars for a priority that is so out of line with our American interests. So we will protect Social Security, and we have to get serious about spending so we can do that for years to come.
Thank you. Mrs. Huff-Brown.
I did the math recently. I've been paying into Social Security longer than everyone here has been alive except Russell. So 46 years I've been paying into Social Security, and you better be sure that I'm expecting to get back. We have to preserve Social Security. My mother depends on it. She's on Social Security. I'm sure there are people here today that are on Social Security. We have to preserve it. I've called for a 5% cut across the board, every federal government agency, every department, because that money is in the system. We have so much fraud. We have so much abuse right now in our system. We need to get that money out. I do not believe in defunding the Department of Education. I do not believe in defunding the IRS or the FBI. I believe that all of those agencies have very critical roles, but I also believe that there is waste in them and others, and we need to recapture some of that money and make sure that money is available for people who need it.
Thank you. Mr. Mowers.
Yeah, we've got to make sure Social Security is there for folks who have been paying into it. By the way, if I said anything otherwise, I'd lose the support of one of my top supporters, and that's my dad. He wouldn't be all that happy with me if we were trying to touch his Social Security. He had to work pretty hard in construction for an entire career to make sure he could retire. So we do owe it to our seniors to make sure that's there for them. The problem is right now politicians want to use it as a piggy bank. They often have. Every time they try to increase spending for something else, where do they take it from? Social Security. It needs to be protected there. It needs to be set aside because that's the commitment that we've made to our workers and our seniors throughout their entire lives. And that's exactly what we'll do. We need to cut spending in a bunch of other places. It's exactly right. But we can never break that promise that we made to our seniors, and we owe it to them.
Mr. Prescott.
Yes, thank you. I think I've told you that 24 years I've been saying the same thing to balance our budget, to make sure the surpluses go to where we need, and that is Social Security. I also have to tell you that during my time in the Senate, I took tough votes upon our New Hampshire's retirement system. We had a retirement system that was much, much more lucrative than the private sector, and I made sure that those things changed. There was little minor things we had to do at the end of the years of service to the state of New Hampshire that wouldn't just piggyback on labor after labor of overtime to give that very, very high retirement. We changed that, we spread out that look back and said, all right, you're gonna get a percentage of that, but the look back is gonna be longer. So it was averaged out instead of jumboed at the end. Those votes were tough. I'm willing to do that again in Washington, D.C., tweak the Social Security so that the most neediest get what they put in. And I'm a card-carrying AARP member. I want my stuff back too. I'm going to be there working for you, and I've proven with my experience I can make the tough votes to make that happen.
Mr. Baxter.
Well, real quick, Gail mentioned the Department of Education. We've got to abolish the Department of Education because we've got to stamp out this wokeism, this CRT, and this far-left gender ideology that's being pushed on our kids. On Social Security, I'm proud to be the only person on this stage that has an issue section dedicated towards senior issues on my website because this is a very, very important set of issues, and we need a member of Congress that's focused on protecting our seniors. On day one, I would co-sponsor Congressman Thomas Massey, who I'm proud to have his endorsement, his bill to stop the double taxation of Social Security benefits for middle-class recipients of Social Security, very important. And then we need to have an attitude of promises made, promises kept. We protect Social Security and entitlements by getting rid of wasteful discretionary spending, like the money that Caroline mentioned that's being spent on gender issues in Pakistan. Rand Paul has actually targeted that specifically in his waste book, and I'm proud to have Rand Paul's endorsement as well.
Ms. Brown, do you want 30 seconds?
I would. I have said very publicly that I support a federal parental bill of rights because I do believe that parents should know exactly what's happening in the classroom. So, but that's something separate from abolishing the Department of Education.
Thank you. We're going to go to closing remarks. We have drawn the order for this prior to the debate, and we're going to start with Mr. Mowers. Each candidate has 90 seconds.
Well, thank you again, and Chris and Wayne and everyone who put on today's debate. It's a great opportunity for everyone to hear from all of us. And I'll say this, you know, I've been honored now for 2.5 years to be traveling around our district, running a traditional New Hampshire grassroots campaign, handshake to handshake, looking folks in the eye and listening to them. And what I found is meeting families a lot like my own, the one I grew up in. You know, my dad was a construction worker, as I said, a diver on the construction of the Seabrook power plant back in the day. Mom was a bartender for a number of years. And to meet folks like them who are working hard every single day to achieve their piece of the American dream. You know, and that's the same thing I'm just looking out for my own son. You know, I want to make sure that's within reach for him. But because of Joe Biden and Chris Pappas, that American dream is getting harder and harder for folks to come by. Everything is costing more, whether it's the cost of college, whether it's the cost of groceries, or the cost of gas. And we need tough and tested conservative leadership to deliver for New Hampshire again. I'm honored to have worked with President Trump as senior White House advisor in his State Department, where we actually approved the Keystone XL pipeline to help make America energy independent, where we actually worked to secure the border and stop the influx of fentanyl coming from China as well, where we actually worked hard every single day to take on an entrenched bureaucracy that was more interested in how they could keep themselves in power than how to deliver for the American people. And that's what I'm going to work for every single day when I get down to Washington, D.C., is to put the American people first again, ensure that our middle class is no longer left behind the way Chris Pappas has.
Thank you. Mrs. Huff-Brown.
Well, I have talked for the past year and 8 days since I decided to get into this race about my life experiences and why I believe my life experiences have shaped who I am. A mother, a new grandmother, a military spouse, spending nearly 4 years overseas, funding the America First agenda, and standing up for American rights. And I continue to do that. I will do that my entire life. In addition to that, spending 30 years as a journalist and fact finder. That's my profession. So those are the skills brought to the job. I have some wonderful endorsements. I've been endorsed by Sean Hannity. I've been endorsed by the Union Leader, New Hampshire's newspaper. I'm very proud of that. And I believe that I am the person that can go to Washington and help to bring just, hopefully, some common sense. Because we are in a very, very desperate situation in this country right now. And right now, we need somebody there that is willing to talk about the issues and talk about the problems and not get mired in the muck and the mud, but rise above that. Rise above that and really sit down and have real conversations about how we solve some of these problems. Because we do have problems. We all know that. And we have to find a way to productively work with each other. That is going to be important. That's why I call myself an independent conservative. I'm not beholden to anyone. No one in leadership like Matt or Caroline.
Tim Baxter.
Well, I just want to thank Chris and New England College again for hosting this debate. My brother Taylor with special needs is what got me involved in the community to begin with. His group home that he lives in, a wonderful group home, was almost forced to close down because of lack of funding. And just trying to get an intern for these politicians to respond to an email was pulling teeth. And it pissed me off, and it lit a fire under me to fight back against corrupt career politicians that are destroying people's lives here in New Hampshire, like my brother Taylor. I'm a volunteer legislator. I'm a small business owner. I'm a nonprofit founder. I'm proud to be endorsed by Senator Rand Paul because of my proven record of being a conservative fighter, for fighting for your constitutional rights, your liberty, your freedom. I led the fight to the 2020 presidential election. I led the fight to stop illegal immigration here in our state. I led the fight to try to protect your medical freedom by stopping vaccine passports. We see corrupt swamp rat Kevin McCarthy spending $2+ million to try to get his chosen puppet Mowers over the finish line. But Caroline Leavitt's endorsed McCarthy as well. They are both two different sides of the same corrupt coin. You have another choice. Vote for me, vote freedom, and give me a call, 603-997-8108. Talk to me anytime.
Caroline Leavitt.
Well, thank you so much to everyone for showing up today. Thank you to all those listening, and thank you, New England College, for hosting today's debate. The reality is, in January 2023, the invasion on our southern border of both illegals and fentanyl will still be raging. Inflation is going to be worse than it is today, and the corrupt media and the Democrats will still be working overtime to brainwash my generation of Americans, your children and your grandchildren. And we are going to need a congresswoman who is from New Hampshire, who will be for New Hampshire, and who will fight to put America first again. I'm the only candidate on this stage who has already done that in President Trump's White House. I worked alongside Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany as we took on the establishment, the Democrats, and the very corrupt and biased media. I've done that over the last year throughout this campaign, and I'll continue to do it when I swear the oath of office in January of 2023. We deserve a congresswoman who is also going to go to bat against the establishment as well. And as I mentioned earlier, there's only one person on this stage that DC and the Swamp and Kevin McCarthy are spending $5 million in desperate attack ads against, and that's me. Because they know I'm the greatest threat to beat their hand puppet, Matt Mowers, to beat Chris Pappas, and then to go to bat for my home state against the Swamp every single day. I humbly ask for your support next Tuesday on the 13th of September. Thank you. God bless you. God bless our state and our great country.
Russell Prescott.
Well, thank you, New England College. I have so much to say in 90 seconds. I can win in November. I have more experience than Chris Pappas. We need to stop inflation, secure our border. We need to work on election integrity. I'm the prime sponsor of voter ID in New Hampshire, and I did that by working with the town clerks. And I worked with Governor Lynch on that, and it was not vetoed, and it was seamless on day one. I have legislative experience. I've created a business-friendly and a robust economy here in New Hampshire, raising everyone's quality of life. I need to bring that to Washington, D.C., and I've learned not to be negative, It is not lasting. What we see here will not last if we continue to fight amongst ourselves. We are just going to deteriorate and deteriorate. A positive message, treating others the way you want to be treated yourself. That will win. I've won 5 races in a row because of my experience of doing the wrong thing and changing my ways. I have a track record. I've been transparent. I've answered every survey. Go to my website, russellprescott.com. You'll learn more about me. I've been married 40 years, learning to be a better husband. I have 5 children, learning to be a better father. I have 7 grandchildren. I am invested in this race. I want them to succeed. I want us all to succeed. And I know that I am not known in Washington, D.C., so vote for me. I'm an independent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prescott. I'm a huge fan of Teddy Roosevelt's Man in the Arena, and all these individuals have stepped in the arena, have put their names on the line, and are willing to serve as members of Congress. So let's hear for our candidates.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for joining us for the Live Free or Die 1st Congressional District GOP debate. I think we've learned more about the candidates today. I want to thank our nonpartisan debate sponsor, ARP New Hampshire. Our host, New England College, Wayne Lesperance, has done a tremendous job. Josh McKelvin, thank you so much. Justin McIsaac, our crew. And I want to invite everybody to get out and vote on September the 13th. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you joining us.